That's what they call me, isn't it? Akani kept her eyes on the peaking flames, her voice dissonant in her ears. Hollow. Kazili Heshane, Princess of Blasphemy. The boy fell silent. She could imagine the look he was giving her. Many had given it in the years following her renouncement of the goddess. It was the kind of look often reserved for those with the white sickness, a look of disgust mingled with a pitiful contempt, but still a healthy dose of fear. For if you get too close, you could contract it. Stand too near someone who had angered the goddess, and her disdain could afflict you as well, and nothing angered the goddess more than blasphemers. Well, almost nothing. No one could have predicted the heir to the throne of all people would turn away from the goddess. Not when her mother was among the most devout of all Oramek. So devout, in fact, that, as well as her duties as queen, she bore the mantle of the High One, chief priest of the palace. Every day of her life, Akani remembered her mother waking up early for prayer and staying up late for the same. If she could not make it to the grand temple for worship, she would go to the little room where candles and incense burned and offer up praise and reverence. She taught Akani with patient hands how to make the goddess's mark in the earth to bless it before giving thanks and prayer. She showed Akani with gentle touches how to bring a swift and painless end to sacrifices, then till the blood with the earth and use the clay to make her body during times of fasting, to mark her body during times of fasting. The goddess visits us in our temples and prayer closets, her mother had said one time while making the mark, but those of true devotion can earn her raka, the greatest of her gifts. This is when her, that is when her will inhabit the body as if it were a temple. I seek this blessing for myself and for you. If it is to be yours, you must be strong like stone and steadfast like the mountain. Her mother was strong. Her mother was steadfast. Even when the white sickness came on, Akani's mother danced and sacrificed and abstained, ever fervent. A frail heart and iron guts had finally forced her mother from the temple and into her bed, where she held Akani's hand in her now too thin ones. It is not for me to decide which path I take, her mother's fingers like talons, the bones bulging. She was barely able to mix the clay, but she painted Akani's face 3 lines under each eye, 2 dots above each brow, and a stroke of her thumb from Akani's hairline to the tip of her nose. The goddess provides, Akani, always. Her mother was prayerful. Her mother was faithful. Her mother was devout. The sickness claimed her still. That's when Akani stopped believing. Kazili Heshane. Akani repeated as the memory of her mother's final night faded, and the flames in the basin near the boy bearing Tosin's colors flared. She lifted her eyes to him. You should run. The color fled his face, leaving his brown skin mottled. His throat worked in a thick swallow, and his eyes widened all the more, white and frightened. He parted his lips as if to speak, but the flap to the tent swung open, the other guards holding it to the side. Bring her. The boy nodded and stepped quickly into the tent, drawing the chains with him. Akani followed. I am stone. Inside, an oppressive heat swallowed her. Sweat prickled against her skin almost instantly, and her lungs struggled to take in air for the briefest of moments. The aches in her body intensified, threatening to drag her whimpering to her knees. But she held fast. She bit into her lower lip hard enough to taste blood. The sting struck sharp against her swimming senses. Laughter sounded from the far side of the tent. Propped against a bed of furs, rugs, and pillows, large and small, lay Tosin. His pale skin was red from the heat and pockmarked with scars, most of them of his own doing. Before taking on this venture of warlord, Tosin had professed himself a holy man. He was a practitioner at the temple, no one of any true import, but despite that, he'd managed to win over many of the goddess's worshippers. He was cunning and manipulative, and when her mother passed and Akani renounced the goddess, he saw that as his opportunity for more. He pleaded his case and took up the now empty role of High One. The mantle would have fallen to Akani's shoulders, but she had cast it aside. In that way, her blasphemy had indeed brought this trouble down